What I'd like to talk about today is about time. So I did a little quick search if I could find a nice quote from Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu is one of the founders of Taoism. This is the philosophy we work with in Yin Yoga practice. This is also the philosophy that connects to traditional Chinese medicine. So the one I found I like to start with is this one. Everything under heaven is a sacred vessel and cannot be controlled. Trying to control leads to ruin. Trying to grasp, we lose. Allow your life to unfold naturally. Know that it too is a vessel of perfection. Just as you breathe in and breathe out, there is a time for being ahead and a time for being behind. A time for being in motion and a time for being at rest. A time for being vigorous and a time for being exhausted. A time for being safe and a time for maybe being in danger. So he describes time as a thing, as experiences we have in life. We can have the experience of not feeling safe. We can have the experience of being in motion. We can have the experience of being exhausted. And actually, I think time is a thing we like to grasp, and it is a huge component of how we actually live our life. But actually, time is nothing. If you think about it, what is time? It all depends what you do in a certain space, and that creates eventually time. Although time is, as we see it, as a concept of seconds and minutes and hours and a day, a week, a year, if we see time as that concept, then we use it to our advantage in Yin Yoga a lot. And then there is a certain time for certain things in our practice, for example. So this is what I wanted to bring up in this little talk. And it came to my mind because I teach in a few other trainings, and in one online Zoom meeting I had last week, in a 200-hour training where I present the restorative and the yin and the accessible yoga and yoga therapy and things like that. The question was like, what is a good time in the day to practice yin? Because I read such and so, but another teacher is telling me this and this and this. And then, what do you think, Astrid? And then actually my answer was, it depends. It fully depends. And of course we can sort of try to make, I don't know, rules around things, put it in boxes for a certain understanding. And if we have all these different boxes of understanding, we still have to put all these different boxes of understanding on a certain situation. So yeah, we can go through a few of those boxes of understanding, and then you can see if you can put it into a certain situation for yourself, which can be for your own practice, a certain situation for your teachings, for example. Because the question that was come up is like, do you practice yin in the morning? Because that is what I read, it's the best for the body, for the physical body. Though if I look at studios and their schedule, the yin is always, or not always, but most of the time scheduled either afternoon or evening. So this is one of the things we can talk about. But first I want to address it as one of the main pillars or principles of our yin yoga practice. What makes it so different from yang, for example, is the time, the amount of time we spend in a certain shape. And then, of course, there are sort of, how do you call it, precepts? Like, okay, we do arms always shorter than legs because the shoulder joint is way more fragile than the hip joint. So not to overstress a certain joint, we spend a shorter amount of time, most likely, when we work with the upper body meridians and the arms than we do when we work with the lower body meridians and with the legs and the hips and the pelvis and the spine. Because that is a little bit more stable than the shoulder joint, for example, is. Yes. So this is already a thing. Time. In general, you can say arm poses 2 to 3 minutes, leg poses or hips or spine. Yeah, you can do 5 minutes or longer. But then that is one box of understanding. And then we have to put this in practice and actually connect it to the person that is practicing. And these are where things get split a lot of the time and people get confused, because your own practice is not the same as when you teach a class. Teaching a class is general, and you might tap out of these different boxes of understanding and you give a general concept of yin. But as soon as you start your own practice, then you can actually observe yourself in the practice. You know your own body way better. You can feel your own physical body. You can feel your own energy. You can observe your own mind, what is going on there. You can feel what is arising from the heart, how your energy is expressing itself in motion. And then you might decide to stay longer because it's actually serving you. Or you might decide to stay way shorter because you go very quickly in discomfort and the edge is like right away there. Then, yeah, maybe the pose is shorter, or you spend a longer time first in this more restorative way, where you release unnecessary tension before you feel that the body is ready to go more into the yin state. Yes, to dive a little bit deeper. So it depends. So that we have general understanding around that. And then it depends on the person. It depends on your own practice. It also depends on other things. I wrote a few things down. Yes, it depends on the time of day. It depends on the weather around you, the environment, the season. It depends on what the person needs. So there's two ways, again, of looking at things: either personal practice or working one-on-one with a person, and you really understand what is going on with this person and you can address those needs, or teaching a general class. Then the other thing that come up with time is like, how long should a sequence be? And I always said, like, especially when I started to teach in yoga, oh yeah, 90 minutes at least. People need time to arrive. People need time to relax. They need time to come first to this restorative state before they can go deeper into the yin state. But nowadays, what you see a lot, especially with teaching online, classes online, recordings online, are all these very short practices. Personally, I didn't wrap my head around it yet. And of course, in one way, I feel anything someone is doing is beneficial because they're doing something. But can you really reach the yin state in 5 minutes? And can you hold that state in the mind, in the body, in the heart as well when you step after 5 minutes off the yoga mat? Personally then think that a longer practice would be way more beneficial. But yeah, we like to serve as many people nowadays, especially in the online world, so short practices. Yes, I'm recording them nowadays as well. And I must admit, I always feel rushed. And for me, it feels a little bit incomplete. But we're all different, yeah? So time and the length of sequence. Then there's also time in rebounds. If we talk sequencing and we're talking the length of time we spent in a certain shape or a certain form, then also the length of the rebound is super important. The time we spend in fully resting, where nothing is compressed, where nothing is tensed, and where there is no torsion. This is the 3 types of stress you can put on the body, the 3 types of load you can put on the tissues: tension, compression, and torsion. So being in pentacle shape, flat on the floor, resting on the belly, or simply what I call beach pose, like resting a little bit backwards with the legs long. These rebound poses are super important because that is actually where the magic happens. Before that, all the pathways in the body are compressed or lengthened in a certain way, and the flow in there is obstructed. And that is good. But when we come out of the shape and the pathways are fully open, then this flow can just rush through the body. And this is also the most beneficial time. This is where the tissues get nourished. This is where the energy can flow. This is also for the practitioner the time to observe this shape shifting, to observe these sensations that come with it, like tingling in the leg somewhere, or heat coming in the stomach, or whoa, like goosebumps coming up, or feeling that there is a lot of space, or things get light or heavy, or whatever it is, how the energy is expressing. Also the time to observe emotions coming up, because everything just flows through the body and comes to the surface. So rebound. The rebound time is important. Then if we look at time in the way of time of day, then there's so much to say about this. But yeah, in general, there is said by a lot of different teachers that it's best to practice yin on a cool body. So it takes a shorter amount of time to reach the connective tissue and the fascia. Because the body is not warmed up, that means that the muscles are not engaged so much. So it's easier to go into relaxation. So it's easier to dive into the connective tissue and the fascia. But it's also harder because sensations are stronger. The body is feeling more stiff. The practice is a little bit more right away, maybe uncomfortable, because over time when one sleeps, like all the fluids in the body reside, and then the tissue is way more stiff and entangled. So morning practice is amazing, but personally, I always add something as shaking before we start to practice, just to create a little bit of movement and a little bit of heat in the body, or tapping. Yes, to stimulate the tissues, to stimulate the energy, to take anything out of the body that is stuck, so we can start not from this stuck and stiff place, but from a little bit more open space. And then you can imagine saying that at the end of the day, yes, the muscles have been way more engaged. The mind is way more full as well, so it's not as easy to find the gaps in between the thoughts and to become still maybe in the body. And there's a lot of digesting going on of the whole day for most people. I don't know, maybe this person's been on the couch all day and done nothing. Or this person just been taking care of a family of 6, or been at work for, I don't know, many hours. We don't know, but in general we can say they have been more engaged, so it takes a longer time to come more to this yin state. Then you can think about how to do yin and yang as well, but maybe that's a topic for next time, because I see I'm almost there already with my 20 minutes. Wow, this time flies. But yeah, I hope this is valid for you, and I don't see any comments, although I'm gonna refresh my page. And I hope if you have any questions or feedback, it would really support me, especially after this first time, to know that you're watching, and also to see what your feedback is when you hear things like that. Maybe you have your own ideas around this, and we can learn from each other. That would be amazing. Yes. So checking my life here. Yeah. So yin and yang, or yang and yin in one class, and how you time those things is maybe another subject. I put it on our list. Another thing I wanted to bring up is the time of the year and the time in one's life. So we can put the question there. And this is maybe a question I wonder about as well, without giving you maybe a clear answer. What about yin yoga for kids? What about yin yoga for teenagers? And eventually I'm saying, actually, with this, to give you a little bit of a pointer, what about yin yoga for bodies that are not fully grown? Could this be beneficial? And what should you be caring about more, maybe, than you do with adults? And then talking adults, what about yin yoga for elderly people? Taking aside that elderly people most of the time have more injuries and also suffer most of the time more from all kinds of discomforts in the body, including things like cardiovascular disease and diabetes, which is all to do with stress in the body. So yin is amazing there, because it's not only about making these shapes. 50%, I always say, of this practice is practicing mindfulness. Yes. So yeah, but I have someone coming to my classes, and she's also a client in yoga therapy with me, who has osteoporosis. And then when we talk about stressing and loading the body with tension, compression, and torsion, then there's a lot of things to think about. So now it becomes like coming again in this biodiversity and the person-to-person approach, and everyone is different. With her, I have to be very careful in the classes, because forward bends are actually contraindicated for osteoporosis. So she does them, but in a restorative way, and she does them way shorter than the rest of the class, and she moves a little bit more, and she knows now all the transitions and the little movements she can make. She moves a little bit more because she needs a little bit more yang in her yin, because her body is already too yin and too brittle and all these things. So she has to be very careful there. And then the other thing I wanted to say, I'll just take a few more minutes, a little bit more of your time, is seasons, which are times as well, the times in the year. And we all love to sequence around Chinese medicine. We love to sequence around the seasons. And wow, yes, it's summertime. Let's make a sequence for the fire element. So you can think about this, if this would be beneficial. Yes, it's a nice match, because summer is the season of the fire element. Though, for example, I'm living in a tropical country. When it's summer here and it is 42 degrees and I'm sweating away, I'm not sure if I want to evoke the fire element in me. It might be too much. So, as everything in life, and with everything we spoke about in this little Facebook Live, in any practice we do, everything is about balance. So when it is like 42 degrees here and the fire element in my environment is like bursting, I do a yin practice that contains a lot of water elements, because there is a relation between water and fire. I also do a practice that contains wood elements, because wood is actually nourishing my fire. Yes. And I make sure that in my practice there are things there where I can release some fire as well. So it's about balancing my fire element in the fiery season of summer. Maybe my practice is a little bit shorter then as well. I don't know. Or maybe longer if it's fully water, because I need it more. So yes, these different boxes we spoke about of understanding, and then playing. Like you take a little bit of here and you take a little bit of there, and you mix those ingredients for the perfect practice for you. Yeah. And then we try to do this in general as well for the classes we teach and the people we guide. So, there's a lot of different things I could talk about, but my time is up. And oh gosh, I really enjoyed this, and I hope you did too. Please let me know to encourage me to come back. And there's one last thing that I wanted to share with you. I might repeat the first quote I had from our dear Lao Tzu. And then there's one other thing I like to end with. So for the ones that missed it, maybe in the beginning, here is the quote. I have to put my glasses on for this. And I will put it underneath the post as well. So, everything under heaven is a sacred vessel and cannot be controlled. Trying to control leads to ruin. Trying to grasp, we lose. So this actually now pops into my mind, comes back to, okay, we create these boxes of understanding, but trying to control these boxes and really keep on like, no, our poses can only be 2 minutes. No. Yin yoga practice needs to be 90 minutes. Trying to control leads to ruin. Trying to grasp, we lose. Allow your life to unfold naturally. Know that it too is a vessel of perfection. So going with whatever is presented and tapping out of all these different boxes to create this perfection. For that moment, for that time of day, for that person, for that season, all these things for yourself. Just as you breathe in and breathe out, there's a time for being ahead and a time for being behind. A time for being in motion and a time for being at rest. A time for being vigorous and a time for being exhausted. A time for being safe and a time for being in danger. Let that sink in. What it describes is the yin and the yang, ahead and behind, motion and rest, vigorous and exhausted, safe and danger. And actually, the time you want to be in is that present moment, that spot right in the middle between the yin and yang, that super present moment where time actually doesn't exist. And then the last quote I like to share with you, also from Lao Tzu. Just to encourage you to keep on practicing. Time is a created thing. To say I don't have time is like saying I don't want to. Yeah. So creating time for ourselves and self-care is super important. Right, as we say here, Sarika. Thank you for watching. I hope to see your comments, your feedback, and your questions underneath this Facebook Live. Ciao for now. Have a good time. Bye.